Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Hewins. I work in the admissions office at RISD. This session is focused exclusively on the MFA photography program. With us today, we have the graduate program director, Lane, who will be going over just discussing a little bit about the program. And then it's really casual. We're going to leave it as a Q&A, so you can ask all your questions that you have. I do have to end the session at 2:55. I have to hop on to the next webinar at 3 with furniture, in case anybody's interested in joining that session. But with that, I'll turn it over to Lane.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jennifer. I really appreciate it. And it's really lovely to meet all of you informally, but in this manner. And I do want to say, and I'll say it many times, if you ever have any more specific questions or you want follow-up, please feel free to reach out to me directly. And I can also always put you in touch with a graduate student if you're kind of looking for a graduate side of things to kind of understand more about the program as well. I have been at RISD for 4 years in the photography department. This is my second year as the graduate program director of photography. And I, of course, am very biased. I love our program, but it's a 2-year program. And the 2 years are very intense. They're very jam-packed, and our thesis happens in the second year. And I would say we have a reputation in the school somewhat for having one of the more demanding theses. It's something that you really start prepping for even a bit in your first year. Though the big difference between the first and the second year is it's all about exploration in the first year. We really encourage students within the first semester to try new things, maybe experiment with something they've never done before or they've been waiting to do. Maybe there's a project that you haven't quite finished that you want to try something new with and get some feedback with before you move on. But it's really a moment where we're hoping you let yourself like come into the rhythm of grad school, imbibe all of this theory that we're also giving you in that first semester, and start to process with the group kind of what that means. The cohorts for both years are between 6 to 8 people, so they're very small. We have currently 3 full-time faculty members, but next year there will be 5. We're having 2 new hires this year. So that's exciting that there'll be 2 new people coming into the department, and those hires will happen in the spring, so definitely look out for them. It's going to be, though, a class ratio of 2 teachers for graduate critique to both years. So right now we have 13 graduate students in the photography department, and you will be taking just 2 departmental classes your first semester. And that first semester I was describing as the kind of experimental one. It's graduate critique, which is sort of the heartbeat, I would say, of the whole program, and then a graduate seminar. And those 2 things really work in tandem, so that you are both experimenting every week with your practice, and you're also having a class that supports your theory and sort of thinking through, how does the image function for you? How are you seeing the image function? What is the image? What are image theories and ways of thinking about representation, documentation, abstraction within the field of photography in that class? And it's both a survey a bit, also led by the instructor who teaches it, and then also very geared towards what do you want to be thinking about. So then and that's also supported by electives. And then in the second semester of your first year, it goes on to just graduate crit, which is the like I said, the heartbeat, 6 hours every week with 2 professors. And then you have the opportunity to take a lot of electives that semester. And that's once again a kind of branching out. What would you like to do? If there's something, for instance, you didn't, let's say you're coming in and you don't have a lot of darkroom experience, but you really want to be printing like silver gelatin, that you could be TAing for a professor. So you don't have to come in and really learn that material. You could be TAing for the credit, as well as understanding or brushing up on that. And that kind of rounds out that first year. Within that first year too, near the end of it, we kind of start giving you some writing prompts, having you think about, okay, what could the thesis possibly look like for me? Because during the summer is this beautiful, wonderful time where most students go away, totally like experiment, come up with, take everything they synthesized, and turn it into something, so that when you're coming back in the fall semester, you have this kind of body of work, or this material that often is being played with or extrapolated, or you're kind of bringing it into the studio and starting to think, what could a project really look like for thesis? So second year is the thesis year, and it doesn't mean you stop experimenting, but it does mean that at the end of that 1 year, you will produce a written thesis, which is a fairly ambitious written thesis. It's at least 20 pages and very detailed. Jen, so your face be like, what? We're not the only department that does it, but we give you a lot of support. There's a writing class specifically for it. We also have a research assistant in the library who is specifically for grad students. So, I mean, ideally, it's really fun. You get to learn a lot about whatever it is that you're thinking about, which I'm sure you will also find fun, whether or not that's like Renaissance painting and how it relates to mirrors and the mirrors inside of a camera. I mean, people go all over the place with their theses, and some of them are not photographically based. They might just be thinking through the image as it relates to performance. So people start to take this theory and go in a lot of different directions. You will be making your thesis committee, which is this opportunity really to bring together 3 people. One has to be a full-time faculty member. One can be a part-time or full-time faculty member around RISD, and then one or Brown, and then the third can be an outside critic, or they can also be from either school. So that could be a curator, myself as GPD, and then a professor at Brown whose theory you love, who you've been kind of trying to work with, or you'd like to have their input into what you're thinking about. So those 3 people, though, become sort of a bit of a touchstone for you in that second year, where you have meetings with all of us multiple times at different points throughout both semesters. So we're kind of helping you think through the thesis paper, but then also a photographic book, and as well then your work that you'll be presenting at the thesis convention center. The wonderful little add-on to that we get to do in photography is we support, in photo, we support a show in New York for the graduate students in Manhattan in the summer after they graduate. So there's this kind of tiny extension of the thesis convention center, I guess you could say, exhibition that can be kind of reworked or rethought, and that gets exhibited in New York. This coming summer, it's going to be at Baxter Street Camera Club, which I'm very excited about. That's sort of the structure. I feel like I get a lot of questions right off the bat as to what sort of students do we look for, or what kind of students do well inside of the program. And because I have Renee on here, who I was kind of talking about this with just a couple of days ago, we're not trying to make a particular kind of student or a particular kind of photographer. We're really interested in supporting your own photographic journey, and how you want to take this time and come out with something meaningful. I often feel like there's really 2 things that I want to give to a student who's coming out of the program. One is a sustainable practice, really one that you love, that you will be able to continue after grad school. And then the second one is that whatever you want your work to do, whether or not that's talk about the relationship of whiteness to the museological field of study, whatever. It could be something very theoretical. It could be like, I want my work to really speak to this particular part of my being and my past. It could go many different directions, theoretical, personal, but that whatever you really want it to do, it does. And we as a group help make sure that whatever you need your work to do, we try and get you the support to make it do that. Wait, you're muted.
Every time, that always happens. I've been dropping links into the chat, but this is the time now to start typing your questions in the Q&A section of Zoom. Like Lane said, we're happy to answer questions about the program, the application, the portfolio, the timeline of things. Okay, great. We have a question already. How many hours would you say per week students are actively engaged in the program?
Lot. A fair amount. Let's see. I'll just take one of our students right now as an example. Well, just at the bare minimum, you would be doing graduate critique, which is this 5, 6 hour course on Tuesdays, runs every week. And it's very marathon on a certain level, but we go through and we'll be looking at your work at least 3 times during the semester. So there's that class. There's the graduate seminar, which is a 3 hour class, typically in the mornings on a Thursday or a Friday. And then you'll have an elective. If you would want, you can also TA. And so that can take up another component of your time. Often if you're TAing at Brown, it's 2 days a week. And if you're TAing with us, which we really encourage, it would be perhaps with the senior class and the undergraduates TAing sort of their major studio course, and that would be Mondays in the afternoons. So that's kind of, that would represent, I think, the class times. If you didn't want to TA, it obviously takes off quite a lot of that load, although professors are always really willing to give you the days that you need to be working on your practice. They know that that's really the important component of coming to school. There's also one other kind of thing that we give for you to do, which is your graduate assistantship, which is a part of the package for coming to school. So we give you $5,000 over the course of the year to have this graduate assistantship, which can look like a lot of different things. Some people want really robust assistantships. Some people we give very like a research-based assistantship where you're kind of thinking through one project, maybe with me, maybe with another professor, or you're thinking a little bit or helping with us with admissions, or you can be, for instance, the visiting artist liaison, which means you're talking with the visiting artists that we bring to the school. So for instance, next semester, we have Carla Leishing, who is a professor at Cornell, who's coming to show their work. She's a photographer. We have Mark McKnight, who some of you might know. He has a pretty big show up at the Whitney right now, solo show. And then we are also having, I'm not going to say it out loud because it's not 100% confirmed, but it's supposed to be today. So let me just see if I can find the email. Are there any other questions?
Yes, we have somebody that's asking, have any students had a wet plate practice? I currently create plates via my portable dark room. I know the chemicals used in this practice a lot of the time are not allowed in several schools.
Mhm. I have seen people, that is one I would have to ask Steve about, who kind of does alternative processes. We have a lot of different places that things happen in the basement. But send me an email about that and I will get you the right answer.
Right, and I'm dropping a link now in the chat as well that just talks about the different workspaces and tools specific for the photo department. So you can kind of get a sense of what's available. And there's a follow-up question to that first question that we had about the time commitment for the program. Would you
Mhm.
say 40 to 50 hours a week on average?
That sounds good. That sounds good. And it flexes up or down depending on how you're dividing your time. I think that people like to say that you have to spend 30 hours a week on your practice outside of class, which I think can amount to a lot of different things as well as homework. But yeah, Justine Curlin is the other one, the woman who will be coming as well. Who, if you don't know, was the photographer who made that pretty iconic book called Girl Pictures.
All right, let's see here. That's a question we've been getting in all of our sessions. And at RISD, you know, the program is 2 years. It's rigorous. And people have been asking about double majoring. And really, it's not really possible at the graduate level. While there's opportunities for some interdisciplinary study, double majoring is just not possible with the time load that you have for your current program, as you can clearly see. All right. Generally, how many students apply each year?
About 150 for 6 to 7 spots.
Right. All right. And again, there's questions going in the chat in the Q&A. I don't want to miss any questions, so if you can put your questions in the Q&A section, that helps me to keep things all in one place. All right. What are the darkroom facilities like? And this person saying, thank you for opening this, offering this session.
Oh, of
But
course, it's my pleasure. I love these sessions. The the darkroom facilities are great. We have a really wonderful dark room. on the 5th floor of the design center, which is ours. And then as a graduate student, we have 5 smaller individual dark rooms. So if you're wanting to do a lot of darkroom processing, you can have your own space that is completely dedicated to your work.
Are there any photography, film editing related jobs in the area that you know of, school affiliated or not?
Photography and film editing. So sort of like production houses or like a fashion photographer who's looking for that kind of work.
That would be my guess. They didn't go into detail.
Okay. Um, I know that some of our students have done retouching jobs while in school, but I think that most of those probably have been people working with an organization inside of New York or Boston. Although Boston is close enough that, and they have a lot more production work than Providence specifically.
Right. Does the work we include in our portfolio have to be super recent? Is a mixture of archival photos from our own archive plus new work permitted? I'm building a current work of older work currently, for example.
I'll try. I think I understand what you're asking, so I'll answer as much as I can. And if I don't, please ask a follow-up. We prefer the work that's going to let us understand what you're thinking about. That typically means that you're showing us 2 to 3 projects in the whole portfolio. And if it's archival images, if you're saying archival as in, say it's someone in your family, their images from the 1950s, it would definitely be what are you doing with those, like you're saying. So if you're building a collage out of those archival images, totally makes sense to me. But if you're thinking about your archive as something that stretches back to prior to even college, I would say probably not including work from before the past 4 years would be best. Although I know that Jen, you give a lot of tips also in portfolios as well. What would you say?
We say that we want to see what you're doing as an artist and designer. If your older work isn't necessarily relevant, we generally say don't include it. Part of the portfolio is curating. That's part of the challenge of it. We don't want to see we don't want to see all your work. We just want to see a limited curated version of it. Again, if you haven't gone into the application yet and started in the slide room, you have 10 to 20 images or projects that you can submit. So it is a challenge for a reason, but if I would say current work, if that is what you're doing and what you're interested in now. All right, this is a great question. This person's really interested in teaching in the future. Can you talk more about teaching assistant opportunities with both within fine arts and humanities within the program?
Absolutely. We give a lot of TA-ships within the photography department. So you will have the opportunity to TA while you're in our department for sure. I have not had anybody, people often do it more than one semester. Um, and there's sometimes the opportunity to TA in the photography department at Brown. I haven't had a lot of crossover yet from my students wanting to be in the humanities, but I'm sure it would be possible. It's just probably whatever graduate program you're thinking about gives priority to their graduate students as well. But also TAing for undergraduate courses. Yeah, for sure. The other thing that we have at RISD, which I think is pretty special, is during winter session, as a first year student, you have the opportunity to propose your own course that you would potentially teach the following winter session. So that's this interstitial time where you're between the first and the second semester, the fall and the spring. And this winter session is a shorter duration of time. It's only 5 weeks, and it's uh, graduate students get to teach these courses that they propose. However, not everyone's gets accepted. Sometimes you're co-teaching them, but it's a really interesting experience.
Great. I'm just going to drop some more information in the chat about that. We also have a concentration that you can take the RISD Collegiate Teaching Certificate if teaching afterwards is something that you want to do. And that is something that's manageable that a lot of people do accompany with their graduate degree. All right. Do students use exclusively their own cameras, or does the school make camera equipment available to students?
So much camera equipment. It's one of the great things about coming here. We have a beautiful set of digital footage. I mean, if you want to be, or if you want to be working in 16 mil, we can get you a camera from FAV. If you were thinking about moving image, we have Fuji's, we have there. It's really exciting. We have this, massive bank of Hasselblads, and we just recently got a really wonderful, I think about 10 um, really easy to use large format cameras, which are just so fun to be able to take out. So yes, we not only that, but we encourage you to take out our equipment.
Any major, so an application question, any major do's or don'ts when it comes to the application, as in exceeding word count, including client work, etc.
Um, Depends on what your client work looks like. If it looks like client work, it's probably not artwork. It's probably something you did for an assignment, like you're saying. So I would be more interested to see what you do without a constraint, when it's just you. However, that being said, we have a student right now, I mean, it was great. She was actually just at the Paris Photo with her first book, which was shortlisted there. So she was doing that a couple weeks ago, and she does a lot of client work. And her client work, she only accepts clients that are really, really close to what she's already doing. So it's almost like that client work for her is part and parcel. She doesn't really differentiate between the two. So that could be the case. It really depends sort of on how that negotiation has happened between you and the client. Word count, remember that we're going through these pretty fast. We're all looking at 150 people. So I would say if you can say something in less words with as much potency, I would go that route. If you can. And the other thing I would say do not do is don't leave something blank. There's always an opportunity to add more information into the image. What that section on the side that you'll see in slide room where you can add a description for the images, that's a really wonderful place to be explaining to us what the process might have been, why you made this photo, where it sort of fits inside of your work, and why you think we should look at it. It's also a big no-no that we've been seeing a lot is when people try to upload PDFs rather than a photograph. And so rather than using those 20 slides, there's one slide that's a PDF that looks like it could be like another 10 images, or using one slide and putting like 17 photos on it. And yes, we can zoom in and take a look at them, but it ends up being really distracting. And I haven't often seen it work in the favor of the student. It feels more like we're seeing a presentation rather than seeing fine artwork.
Great, thank you. That we say that in all of our sessions, Lane. Um, and I can't stress this enough. If you haven't already, start your application now. You can work on your application and your slide room portfolio simultaneously. Please don't wait till the week before. RISD does close. While we are answering emails during the break, we aren't as responsive as we normally are. So to avoid panic on your end, we recommend everyone to just start getting in there now, starting your application, working through slide room and figuring it out. We're happy to answer your questions. Molly and I have done some portfolio tip Q&As about the nitty-gritty mechanics of slide room. So we can share that recording with you if you email us at admissions@risd.edu. All right. What is the crossover like with faculty, primarily working in the undergraduate program?
It's a great question. I I mean, we have one or two people who primarily teach down there, and they're wonderful. Henry Hornstein primarily teaches with the undergraduates, and they're very receptive to talking with graduate students. They really love being involved in master's work, in work that's more advanced. So I'd say they're very open should you want to talk with them and have studio visits. but most of us all swap between undergraduate and graduate. So it's a kind of more holistic look at, I think, education in that way.
How flexible is RISD with students utilizing medium-specific studios other than their own? This person learned about uh, photopolymer printing and printmaking courses during their undergrad and wanted to experiment with more alternative processes with their photography work. Would this practice not be encouraged?
Hugely encouraged. Please, yes, that's what we want. We so want you, especially in your first year, to be taking advantage of all of the electives you can take, of learning where the risograph is and trying to see if you could use it for printing, or thinking through something unusual, or making an experiment and it fails, or those types of moments of moving outside of what you've had access to, moving outside of the way you've been thinking about an image is 100% what we are so excited to see you do.
Right. How common is it for grad students to have kids and families? And can you talk more about specific ways the program is supportive of a family dedicated applications? Are there accessible places to breastfeed, flexibility around family and schedules?
Mm. Great question. We have had a number of students who have come through the program, both with children, some who have given birth while in the program. We've had a faculty member who just had a child. And it is, well, I mean, we're humans. We are so here for you. We have had, in every year I've had recently, we've had one of our graduate students or more has been married. So it's very exciting in some ways because their partners get to come be a part of our larger cohort, if you will. There's a number of opportunities to be involved with the photography community. So, at these lectures that we have, for instance, we just gave one for Aspen Mays a couple of weeks ago. We always do potlucks afterwards, where we invite the seniors from the undergraduate classes, and we invite all the graduate students and any of their partners or any friends who might be in town. So they're this kind of like 3 or 4 times throughout each semester, we have these moments of really trying to bring everybody together who might be even a little bit outside of these two cohorts, right? So there's also, we get a lot of alumni coming back to those lectures and coming to the pizza parties and being a part of that. With having a child, I think we unfortunately don't have daycare, do we, Jen?
No, we
That
don't.
makes me really sad, but we should. But in light of that, we're very, especially, I mean, I'm completely understanding of that things happen and that you might need to be at a doctor's visit or something comes up when this is happening, because you're a real life person also going through real life while being a graduate student.
Great, thank you, Lane.
Oh, yes, we did have a room specifically for our professor who just given birth.
Any thoughts and advice, including work shot on lower quality cameras, such as a camcorder, pinhole camera, in the portfolio?
Absolutely, great. The quality of the image, and if you haven't, you should read Hito Sterile's In Defense of the Poor Image. It's a great essay on the the degrading of the image. As long as the reason for the mechanics of it, if it's a digital camera, if it's a camcorder, does it add to the content? Does it make sense with what the photograph is about or what this piece of media is about? Is there a reason that I'm looking at an aesthetic that looks like it's from the 1990s or the early aughts? Is there something that you're saying with a pinhole camera that's about the history of photography that's really integral to the subject matter that you're showing me? So I think that those are often what we're looking for, is tell us why the medium, or why the specific camera, why the paper, why the scale, why any of that really is relating to what you are trying to say as an artist.
This is a great question. It's a portfolio question. I'm in the middle of creating a book. Is there a preference of submitting only the images in the book, or is a screen grab of the page spread better? Personally, the image on the spread makes more sense. Also, there are words and paragraphs on these spreads.
If it makes more sense to you because the words are integral and you've been creating this book, and it has a lot of your thinking of, especially about layout and sequence. Sequence is so important in our medium, and it's important in all the portfolios, right? But almost more so, I feel like, in photography. So if the spread makes sense, go with that. But also know we get a lot of videos of people's books where you're doing the page thing. And I do think that's a great way to also show us a lot of the work in the book after you've shown us, say, like 6 or 7 images from it. And also, if there's one image in the book that you're particularly proud of, or you want us to really focus on a particular detail or quality that you captured inside of it, that might be the argument to have one of the pages just be that still.
Aside from TA-ships, what other options for financial aid and how attainable is the program for candidates without financial means?
We don't have the kind of endowment as Yale or a couple of other programs where you could expect to get a full ride. Unfortunately, RISD, we don't have anyone to whom we can offer a complete and total scholarship. So there will always be a component of the program that will have to be coming from sourced through the students, unfortunately. However, everyone gets financial aid. There's not a single person who's going to come through here and you'll have to pay full price on the ticket that it says online. So everyone does end up uh, with some sort of scholarship. There's the graduate assistantship, which is a form of scholarship that we give you, which is the $5,000 for both years. So it's 5,000 one year, 5,000 the second year. The TA-ships do pay a bit of money as well. And then there's the scholarships that you would be sort of competing for with everyone else.
And I'll just add to that as well. It'll be I don't know if I said it here. I've said it like 5 times today, but after you submit your application, in your applicant portal, there'll be a RISD institutional form. If you want aid, if you need aid, you'd want to fill that form out, and that's open to international and domestic students. So at RISD, both international and domestic students are eligible for fellowship and assistantships. As Lane mentioned, they vary. They typically don't cover the full cost of attendance, but we do have a robust student financial services office, a campus employment office. We have platforms that help you look for outside funding as well. We have a webinar tomorrow with Student Financial Services. If you want to learn more about how to finance your education here, I recommend that you attend that. Dan Rossi will go into great detail about all the different options that are available to you. All right. I think this is another family question, but are partners able to find work through RISD?
I've seen it happen, but I don't know how easy it is because no one's ever actually come to me to find that. But I do know that I've seen spouses work in the library and in the RISD store. So that has been, I've seen people working both in those contexts before.
And there's plenty of opportunities too. We have the RISD Museum as well, which is another place where partners can work as well. All right. This is a great question. If people make it to the interviews, what can they expect that to look like?
Sure. We try to make them as equitable as possible, which means we, as like a faculty body, come up with a list of 6 to 10 questions. Sometimes, some years it's more, sometimes it's less, that try and give you a wide range of different topics to address that we're interested in learning about you. And we ask every candidate the same questions, and they change every year. So that's so that you can kind of know also that we're not tailoring it specifically to each person. It's really about trying to get an understanding of who you are, and just what kind of a thinker you are. Most of all, the questions range from, what do you think your work says it does, those types of questions, to like who are you looking at? Like, what are your references? Who are your inspirations? So it can be about you, it can be about your work. And then we give you a chance to talk to us. So I also say definitely come in with whatever questions you want to know the answers to. And we're totally open. That could look like, once again, financial aid questions. It could look like, what's it like to live in Providence? I'm moving from California. I've never been in a cold weather climate. It could be, is there a queer community there with people I can actually engage with? So all of those are very welcome, down to, hey, Brian Ulrich, how do you think about photography? We've gotten all of those.
That's great. When considering the cohort of students you are curating for each year, does age become a factor? Does the program generally discourage younger applicants from applying?
No, not at all. It is something that we don't consider when putting together the cohorts, really. It's like very surprising, I would say. Our cohort that is graduating right now, the second year cohort, all of them are under all of the ages of the first years. So that means our youngest first year is older than our oldest second year, if that makes sense. It's wildly split. And we have right now graduate students in their 40s. And we have graduate students that are 23 who just got out of their undergrad. It really ranges. It really is very much looking for someone who seems like a very good fit for the program, who's engaged, who's excited, and who can really also tell us why graduate school is right for them right now.
Great. Alongside being a photographer, I run an independent photo book press.
Cool.
Should I approach the portfolio by only including my work, or should I consider including some of the books I've designed and released through the press?
That's so cool. I want to know what your press is. I would say absolutely include that. And if curation is a component of your practice or something you're looking to bring into school with you, there's a really wonderful opportunity at the museum. Do you know about this, Jen? Like the curatorial position. It's like almost like a TA-ship, but it's specifically with the museum. It's a 1-year position, I think, but you would need to apply for it in the summer once you've been accepted. Just putting that out there, probably not just for you, but for anybody who might be thinking that way. Um, I would say yes. I would say yes. If there's a book that you're incredibly proud of, bookmaking and book printing, sequencing are incredibly important to our professors and to our students. Not surprisingly, Steve Smith is like our book guru. He does a wonderful job at that. And Drew Leventhal has recently been also teaching book design and bookmaking. He started a press right after graduating 2 years ago, and Drew had 2 books in Perry Photo this year too. So it's something we're very excited about as a department.
Are there opportunities to work in a color darkroom?
Yes, no color dark. Sorry, we unfortunately do not have a color dark room.
What types of work are graduates getting out of graduation,
Mm.
and what resources are available for connecting grads to opportunities to thrive?
Absolutely. Well, one thing I would say is definitely go on the website and on Instagram and see some of our recent graduate students. I've had such incredible pleasure and luck to be working with a number of students who have gotten the Aperture Portfolio Prize or been shortlisted for their Aperture Portfolio Prizes or the Kodak Prize. One of our students right now has been basically on residency since she graduated, Ali Subata. And for instance, like I just said, Drew Leventhal has been working in book printing presses and now has been making his own. Students teach. I have a student who is now, I think he's 26 and is on tenure. He's on a tenure track job in California in a photography department. So, I mean, I've seen a lot of really wonderful, successful, or what people I think would call successful opportunities arise for our students. The way that we try and set you up for that is having a number of different both curators and galleries, essentially people who might be curating this, let's say somebody who's curating museums versus somebody who has a gallery. Try and bring those different people into the room with you, into our space where they'll be seeing your work. So those conversations happen there. And I would also say our alumni are very tight. If, I have one of our alumni whose name is Care right now, who's on a fellowship at the New York Times. And so he's been printing the work of a lot of our current graduate students just because he's been able to get their work in the New York Times. But in particular, I think that type of cyclical nature, that wanting to mentor and being open to the graduate students is also another methodology. There's that. And then we also have a professional practice class that happens during the winter session, that's typically taught by Henry Hornstein, where you go to Manhattan for, I think, 3 days, with Henry, and you go to like every gallery you guys can kind of hit and try and talk to the gallerists. That can be a really lovely way. And then as a department, we have one day in the spring where we go to APAD and to the it depends. Sometimes it's APAD and sometimes they just decoupled them, the New York Book Fair. So, but it's one or the other.
I deleted the wrong question.
Although I will say RISD also has some really cool opportunities too, which is that if you were to get into Skowhegan, or a couple like Arts Anderson Ranch, if you were to get into one of those residencies as a graduate student, we pay for it for you to go, which is great because Skowhegan's like $6,000. You have 2 years to do that. We also help students apply for Fulbrights, which is amazing, and RISD's team is incredible. Your second year as a graduate student, they kind of like work with you for literally almost a year to get your application together to be able to put it into a Fulbright competition, essentially.
Great. I just put information about the RISD Fulbright in the chat, and that's a process that's managed by our careers office. And they went over that in their session yesterday. So if you want to learn more about that, you can take a look at that session. All right. This is an interesting question. Is there a way to include a physical book as part of my application, as in sending it in the mail? Books are so much more impactful in person. And I just want to say there was a time in RISD admissions office before my time when people did mail in portfolios, and the attic at Woods Gary used to be filled with them. We do not recommend, unfortunately, at least mailing them into the admissions office.
No, we don't either. It's also a bit of an equity issue in the sense that that's basic. I mean, let's say at the minimum you have 45 images in your book, at the max, I don't know, like 80. But you might have one of those massive books, but then it's kind of like I get to see your portfolio in a much larger way than someone else. But I definitely hear you. And our mini solution right now is to do the flip through as a way to kind of show us the binding and the sort of physicality of it.
This might be getting in the weeds a little bit too much, but do you have any statistics about the average income post graduation?
Hmm?
Like
Oh, post graduation.
yeah.
That would not be me that would know. Do you know that, Jen? Do we keep track of that?
We don't. You want to talk to the Career Center. They keep track of a lot of those statistics. They have like a fact sheet that they update every year. So again, you can either contact the Career Center, or I can send that link to that recording yesterday. Right. And let's see here. We still have some more time. There's one more question left. Are there opportunities for teaching alternative process workshops to undergrads and other students? I really enjoy hosting workshops and wondering if this was part of the TA program or something you have seen in the past.
It is something I have seen in the past. Sometimes, I'd say typically we have a graduate student teach one of our normal classes. Normal classes are department classes per year. So right now, this coming spring, I have 2 students who will be teaching the Intro to Darkroom class together. And so that is possible. And that's something that, if you know that coming in, we can try and plan around it because we have a year and a half to plan for that for you. That being said, also you can be hosting you wouldn't get paid for it, but you could also be hosting your own workshops in alternative processes, which I encourage students to do a lot. I have a student right now she's creating basically a performance group on campus since we don't have a performance department. And so she's been kind of collecting other graduate students who are interested in performing, and they're trying to get together a regular performance schedule. They're actually performing tomorrow night is their first performance at the tap room. If you feel like coming by at 7:30, if you happen to be in Providence. But I do think that if there's something you're passionate about, we will try and help you find a way to do that. Whether or not it's like a freshman open house is also another way I could see that being an exciting thing to be showing them. But yes, is the short answer. I mean, long answer.
All right, we got about 5 more minutes. There's no more questions. So if you have any last minute questions, throw them in now. Otherwise, you can email us, if you think of anything after this session. If you want to watch this again, it is being recorded. Give us about 24 hours. We will email this recording to everybody who has registered for this event. Okay, we got one more question coming in. Again, in regards to the portfolio component of the application, all the panic last minute questions coming in. Would you suggest submitting a cohesive long-term project that matches one theme or a collection of images from different projects?
One project. I would say one project. I would say one or two. Two would be good. Two would be good. Two would be great.
Here, what is the most appropriate way to ask for feedback on a portfolio before it's submitted? And I can help answer this question. We have one more portfolio, RISD hosted portfolio review day coming up. It's on December 6th. If you go onto our events page, you'll be able to see that. I'll drop it in the link now. In order to be equitable for everybody, we only review portfolios during these designated portfolio review days. We unfortunately at admissions don't have the capacity to review portfolios out of these days. These are hosted by RISD alumni from different areas. I have a wonderful alumni from photo. He went through the BFA, a photo program, wasn't a grad student. It's Stefan Sagmiller. But he has been participating in our online reviews for 3 years now. He does all of the sessions for us. He's amazing. And we have Megan Christensen, who's also a grad. Yeah,
That's great. I was on her thesis committee.
she's wonderful. So she's been helping us out at those sessions too. So luckily for the photo people, we do have photography represented at these sessions to get some feedback on your portfolios.
And I would say also, if you were admitted to the class, please, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jen. What are they
No,
doing?
that's
Let's finish.
sorry. That's my overview.
Let's go, let's go, let's go.
All right, and all right. Are there any more in-person open house plans in the near future? So we do this 1 week online session ending this Friday in an in-person open house. If you can make to campus, that's the one opportunity that studios are open, departments are open to get a peek into seeing what it's like to be a RISD student here. Unfortunately, that's the only other open house that we have before the application deadline. Right. Here, have you had students in the past collaborate with apparel design or take more of a focus in fashion editorial photography?
Yes, we have had students who are coming from fashion and thinking about fashion through an art standpoint, I guess you could say, through a fine art lens. Amber Mahoney is a student you could look at to see some of her work. She definitely was doing editorial museum covers, but you'll see as soon as you look at it, it's like editorial art. So she was working in that way, but she was not working with apparel students. So I haven't had anybody specifically yet work with apparel students, but I could see it being an interesting collaboration.
Great. All right, that will do it for us today, Lane. Thank you so much. We
Okay.
answered all the questions today, 28 questions. So Thank you. That was a lot. And again, if anybody has any questions after this, feel free to email us at admissions@risd.edu. And Lane, are you comfortable with people
Yes.
emailing you?
Please email me.
Perfect, great. You can find Lane's contact online, or you can email us at admissions@risd.edu, and I can make that connection if you make reference to this online session. But I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing your applications.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Lane.